Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy foods, isn't it? So fascinating how even the words of Hippocrates still ring very clear today. And every medical doctor, as you know, takes the Hippocratic Oath. And there's some very important tenets in there that are absolutely the heart of Cayce's material. And this is certainly one of them with regards to the diet, how to detoxify the body using medicines and foods. And so, a quick little review from yesterday evening, that one can preserve their youth, their livelihood, as long as they desire, but will they pay the price that is necessary? We must consider the diet, as well as the application of the knowledge that we obtain from within ourselves. And so if we consider that the body is how old? 7 years old. Technically speaking, you are made up of what? Everything you've been eating for the past 7 years. True story. And so it becomes even more important to know that this self-sustaining organism, this house to which is constantly evolving and co-creating, is all built on exactly what you're feeding it. And as we began yesterday, honoring the body as a divine temple and treating it as such, as opposed to just whatever's quick, easy, cheap, and just get it down the guzzle and another few more miles, approaching it the same way we would honor our churches, our mosques and synagogues. And there should be a warning to all as to such conditions that can form in the body. For would the assimilations and the eliminations be kept near to normal in the human, the days of life might be extended to whatever period desired. For the body physical becomes that which it assimilates from material nature. So everything you've been drawing into the body is literally what you can see and feel in your physical nature. However, the body mental also becomes that which it assimilates from both physical mental and spiritual mental. And so what does this mean? Well, the mind essentially is directly related to what you consume in the physical level, right? And so with good nutrition, our brains can optimally function. So according to the recent evidence, what are the best nutrients for optimal brain functioning, for improved memory recall, and for the nervous system? Well, first and foremost, you have to recognize that the brain is mostly fat. And so getting good, healthy fats. There's abundant research that DHA and EPA fats are essential. We now see the influence of omega-3 fats, right, and good in fish oils every single day. And according to literally a brain surgeon told me one of the best foods for the brain, he said, would be flaxseed oil, about a tablespoon dribbled over some low or non-fat cottage cheese. And so it's quintessentially important, not only for us as adults, but also for babies. So if you're aware of the research in pediatric medicine, that the number 1 and number 2 recommended nutrients and things given to children and infants, even in utero, number 1 is a good B complex, so getting folic acid for brain development. You must have all the B vitamins present for the brain to optimally function. And then, of course, those good, healthy fats. So this can be obviously derived from mother's diet. So recommending that every mother take DHA and EPA fats. So there's different sources of this. If one is a vegan, you can simply get this from algae sources. I really like Nordic Naturals. Nordic Naturals is a great brand for excellent, organic-based, good, healthy fats. Even had a farmer tell me one time, one of the best things to do, and take this for what you will, is to take scrambled eggs and a little bit of fresh cow brain and mix it in. It tastes apparently excellent. I never tried it. I don't know. Maybe ask Hannibal Lecter for another recommendation on that one. But you see, that what you're eating in your physical body directly affects the function of the mind. So if you want the mind to improve, first and foremost, look at the diet. But as we also pointed out yesterday, that we're also assimilating that from the spiritual mental, which is the thoughts, the people you expose yourself to, the conversations you engage in, the music you listen to, the arts, the movies, the theater, all these things that directly influence the health of our mind. And I love this sentence. And he says, the soul is all the entity is, has been, or may be. For we are indeed eternal spiritual beings. And so when it comes to the diet, no real topic gets as sensitive as this one, especially this day and age, and this culture of weight loss and quick, rapid things and so forth. And Edgar Cayce said, do not worry as to whether you are fat and thin. He says, worry rather as to whether you are using your body mentally and physically as an expression of thy ideal. So often comes back when patients say, how can I quickly lose weight? I want to look good? No. It's just a number, just like the age. Think, how do you feel? Well, I feel pretty good. Well, good. That's how it should be. So again, don't worry as to whether you're fat or thin when we're talking about diet. Worry if you're living up to your ideal and being that expression of the divine influence in this world. Because what we think and what we eat combined together makes us what we are physically and mentally. What we eat combined with what we think makes us what we are physically and mentally. So you can eat the most nutritious, balanced, organic, whole food diet. But if you treat other people with anger and lash out constantly and belittle others, it's kind of all for naught. That's why it's so important to always honor and bless the food that you eat, especially when serving to another. And this individual, this reading asked, is there any other advice or counsel I should get Mr. Cayce? And he says, only as to your attitude. As indicated for most people and very well here, don't get mad and cuss a body out mentally or even with your voice. Because this brings more toxins, this brings more poisons into your body that may be created by taking foods that are not good. So, in the end, it's always more important what comes out of your mouth than what goes in it. But certainly what goes in it is very important too. And so, here we are with the digestive system, and you can see a few very simple things here. Number one, really digestion truly begins in the actual brain. And so as soon as you begin to think about foods, and I could simply describe a wonderful, balanced, nutritious meal, and just simply thinking about it, we already start to salivate and prepare the body for a meal. And oftentimes when we come across these wonderful aromas that reminds us of Mother's kitchen, and back in the day, oftentimes it brings back a wash of memories. I mean, think about it. How many of you have comfort foods? Raise your hand if you have a comfort food that you often go to, right? Well, where do those comfort foods come from? But the memory, deep in the subconscious and the unconscious mind. And so, as we consider the role of the mind as the builder, then physically it really begins in the oral cavity with salivation. And so, according to Edgar Cayce, one of the worst things that we can do is eat our food really quickly. He says bolting food or trying to rush it down the body is one of the most problematic influences in the human immune system. Someone asked him, what's the most common cause of the colds? So the common cold is known as the rhinovirus. And guess what he said? Not chewing your food enough. The number one cause for a cold is not chewing your food enough. And sure enough, when someone asked him, how many times should I chew the food? He's like, I don't know, like about 30 times or so. There's always some humor in the readings where he would say exactly 36 and 1/2 times. Come on. Just chew it enough where it's thoroughly masticated. So literally what you're doing when you chew your food is you're literally massaging those salivary glands. You're producing an abundance of enzymes that as it mixes into the food not only helps to prevent pathogens and bacteria, but further breaks it down so you can absorb and maximally assimilate all those nutrients. Now, obviously, the nose and smelling has a great deal to do with taste. You want to see this in action? Go to a wine tasting bar. How many of you ever love wine tasting? Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite Peter Shobe jokes is when he realized that the research had come out across California to help with incontinence. They actually developed a wine to help people with incontinence. It was called Pinot Noir. Some wait for it. So, with the smelling of either a grape or wine in a glass or smelling of foods, that already begins the taste and the salivation. Now, as it begins to move down to the esophagus, one of the most important things from the readings is not to eat or drink very cold beverages or eat very, very hot foods. So how many of you are familiar with his recommendation to avoid a lot of ice in beverages? And the main reason is because ice, if you put it to a wound, what does it do? It causes vasoconstriction, right? Constricting those blood vessels and allows swelling to go down. Well, that's well and dandy if you just bumped your elbow coming down the stairs, but it's not good when you're putting it down the esophagus because that vasoconstriction actually tightens the esophagus, restricting the ability to actually drink and digest foods. So according to Edgar Cayce, one of the healthiest things we can do is just drink at room temperature. Anyone traveled around Europe and gone to France, and even on a summer day, as Americans, we want that nice cold beverage, and here comes room temperature. And of course, last time I traveled out there, they would always, do you guys really want ice? And no, we're good. But yes, with most beverages, he preferred to drink room temperature, not a whole lot of ice in it, because it causes that constriction of the esophagus. Now, as the esophagus enters into the stomach, what is missing here is the dome-shaped muscle that goes right over top of all these organs. Anyone can name that dome-shaped muscle? Yeah, very good, the diaphragm. So a couple things definitely come up here. Number one is the cause for what's known as hiatal hernias. So if the esophagus is descending down, say this is your stomach, this is the dome of the diaphragm. So with a hiatal hernia, what typically happens is there's an entrapment as that tissue actually moves superiorly, and right above the diaphragm it can actually swell and trap some of those acids, because in the lower portion actually where a lot of this becomes secreted, and the acids and the enzymes in the stomach. So there's a very simple old school osteopathic technique that I'll teach you right now to actually treat and correct this, and I've shown patients how to do this on themselves. So in the anatomy, your stomach predominantly lies on the left side, called the left upper quadrant. So everybody right now, palpate, which means to feel, the edge of your rib cage along this left side. Now as you gently press your fingers in, take a nice deep breath in, and you feel that tissue begin to press out. As you inhale, the diaphragm descends as it contracts in this direction. Now as you exhale, notice how it softens, and the diaphragm moves up superiorly. So now think about it. If you wanted to help correct a hiatal hernia from the movement of the esophagus upward, as the body exhales, where's the diaphragm move again? Upward. So a gentle traction into the walls of the stomach, pulling it slightly downward. As you exhale, the diaphragm moves up, you traction the stomach down, it can actually correct that hiatal hernia. Now you're not talking like it's sliding around like a slip and slide, but actually just a few millimeters can make the world of difference. So if that is the cause for this condition, the treatment's very simple. You bend the knees all the way up to relax the abdominal wall. The doctor takes a wall of 8 fingers right along this left lower rib cage. I do a typical cycle about 6 breaths. So about 3 breaths to get all the way down, 3 breaths to traction, which means to pull inferiorly. So it'd be something like this. As the patient exhales, we go down, 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 down. Short breath in, long breath out, and I work my fingers right to the edge to where it's comfortable but deep. Then the treatment is simply this. Short breath in, long breath out. As the patient exhales, I pull in and down just like this. So my fingers are doing this, tractioning downward as they exhale, hold, breathe in short, exhale long, in, down, and just a gentle nudge. I'll do it about 3 times. And I would say in about 40% of the cases, it correctly fixes it in one treatment. I would say about 70 to 80%. It usually takes a few, and only about 10 to 20% makes a little bit to no difference, which obviously is hence its other causes. And so with hiatal hernias, there is an osteopathic correction that can be made. Oh, thank you so much, my dear. Now, other things to consider, because when this happens and you have these acids in the spillover, it can often stimulate these nerves called the cardiac plexus around this area. And this is what causes that heartburn-like syndrome. So, simple things to do is make smaller meals and limit the amount of proteins and fats in those meals. Oftentimes, we also want to be sensitive. Some of those common irritants would be citrus and coffees. Okay? So if you or anyone has these conditions, be mindful of large meals, heavy in protein and fats, and be mindful of coffee or citruses that can often irritate it. Now, one other thing to consider is this. When you take a large meal, or really any meal, into your body, one of the worst things you can do is lay down. You ever hear the old adage, never eat while you're laying down? And this is why. Because when the body is more in a horizontal position, any spillover of acids can stimulate that, and you can often have that tachycardia, that rapid heart rate, that heartbeat, or even palpitations. So if this occurs, to simply ask, well, are you lying down after a big heavy meal? If the answer is yes, then you got to be upright. So the correction of most GERD is making sure that the body's always lying upright, and especially during the evening time if this is present. Now, once the food actually gets into the stomach, not a whole lot going on here. We absorb trace amounts of protein. This is oftentimes where drugs are first absorbed into the stomach lining. But oftentimes you can get this ulceration or these ulcers within the stomach. And so according to medical research, there's a little bug called H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, that causes ulcers. So the guy who first came up with this actually is a fascinating story because he theorized that this was the cause. And of course, like most, first reaction, medical professionals, ha ha ha, you're not right at all. So what does he do? Makes a nice big cocktail of H. pylori and drinks it. Gives himself ulcers, shows the community, and they give him a Nobel Prize for that. Don't go home drinking H. pylori to get a Nobel Prize. Wow, that's how it's. No, don't do that. But so we know that this is the case. So guess what one of the most effective treatments to neutralize H. pylori is? Cinnamon. Raw or natural cinnamon tea. This is why in the original days when they would make large vats of the apple cider, what they always put in it? Cinnamon. Not only does it help with the taste, but it also helps to eliminate and reduce naturally pathogens and bacteria. Now, later on we'll talk about some of the tonics that aided in digestion and other things certainly to do as well. One of the most common Cayce herbs that was given for this was licorice. So doing a licorice tea, and you can even take hydrochlorate tablets, or HCl, and in the readings he called this lactated pepsin. We're going to come back to this again, you'll see, in describing the influence of the stomach. Now once everything is kind of broken down, it then moves into the first part of the small intestine. There's a lot to really say here, but we'll keep it simple. So this is called the duodenum. And it was literally named because the Greek anatomists, when they were first dissecting, they said, hey, look at that. It's about 12 fingers long. So they named it duodenum, which literally means 12 fingers. Which you're like, well, I have 10 fingers, so how'd they do that one? It's like the six-fingered man from the... Anyway, so the duodenum is where most of digestion actually takes place, or most of the absorption. Because in this duodenum, this is where the gallbladder, the liver, and the pancreas all secrete their enzymes and their juices in order to maximally break these things down. And so that's the name of the game with regards to nutrition. If you can break all your food and components down to the smallest amounts, that's where you're going to absorb most of your nutrients. Hence why chewing the food or using masticating juicers, and I'm a big advocate of this. I'll even give you some of my favorite recipes based on the Cayce readings that I personally use and I absolutely swear by. And in my opinion, this is literally one of the fountains of youth that could be used, especially in the new age, is using predominantly a lot more juicing because you get the micronutrients, it's broken down, and you can certainly absorb more and more fruits and vegetables with a lot less consumption and other things in the body. But in this duodenum, we see a few things that often take place. As we just mentioned, all the enzymes from liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas are secreted, but this is also where we see how everything is literally broken down. So oftentimes I'll hear this phrase that I need to get protein, or I need more protein in my diet, or digesting protein, etc. But the truth is this: your body does not digest protein. Sorry, it doesn't. It actually digests amino acids. In fact, your body can only digest and actually assimilate one or two amino acid sequences called short-chain amino acids. One more time, the body does not digest protein. So the truth is this: you hear about things like complete proteins, right? Well, all that means is you're giving the body all the amino acid sequences. Because the truth is this: your cells, based on DNA coding, makes proteins. Do you see the difference? So as long as you give your body a complete amino acid sequence, your cells will manufacture any and all proteins that your body needs to heal and repair itself. So this is why you can have a predominantly vegetarian and vegan diet, yet still thrive and be very strong and healthy. Because the combination of things like brown rice, beans, and corn gives you a complete amino acid sequence. It was Peter Shope who taught me that the combination of preferably organic, but soy milk with rice milk, or soy, rice, and almond milk also forms a complete amino acid sequence. Obviously, consuming meat is also a complete amino acid. Some of the other high sources of protein would be things like whey. So if you want to be like Miss Muffet on her tuffet eating your curds of whey, it's a great source of protein, as well as eggs, and in the whites, the albumin. You know what's fascinating is, ever seen the readings of Edgar Cayce on eggs? He recommends this, to only eat a whole egg, white and the yolk, about once, maybe twice a week. But he says to take the yolks, throw away the egg whites, take the yolks up to about 4 days a week, and several of them. So according to the readings, eggs are very, very healthy. The whites have a good source of protein, but they also have what's called avidin, which actually interferes with some of the absorption of the yolks. Now, oftentimes people say, well, Dr. Amonte, aren't the yolks high in cholesterol? Yes, they are, and you want those, because most of your hormones are made from what? Cholesterol. So I don't know what meeting and when it took place that cholesterol got a bad rap. We obviously want to keep it in balance like everything else in the body, absolutely true. But all of your sex hormones and many others are derived from cholesterol. So therefore, if a patient is looking to increase that aspect of life, take cholesterol basic supplements and it will literally increase the amount of hormones produced in the body. And so literally, according to Edgar Cayce, cook your eggs, get rid of the whites, eat the yolks. Not only has the cholesterol, but it's packed with B vitamins and many other things. So, as we then continue through the rest of the digestive system, main part of your small intestine is called the ileum, and the last little part here, where it goes into the colon, called the ileocecal valve. So what's interesting is oftentimes because the inside of this is smooth muscle, and just like your other muscles like skeletal muscle, this can form knots and adhesions as well. An adhesion is simply a term to where tissues are basically stuck to each other. That's the clinical term for a muscle knot. So right here, adhesions can form. So oftentimes, you can actually use massage and old school osteopathic techniques to literally push and pull to release the adhesions to help along with the movement of foods into the colon. Now, once we get to the colon, it basically moves upward along your right side, takes a little bend around the liver, that's called your hepatic flexure, goes across the transverse colon, takes a little bend here by the spleen called your splenic flexure, and on down, and technically it forms a slight little S called your sigmoid colon. So in the Cayce-Riley technique, always we begin over here at the sigmoid colon doing deep circle frictions to help move things along, and it literally stimulates this rhythmic contraction inside the organs called peristalsis. You love new words, huh? Say that one with me. Peristalsis. So if there's any constipation or backing up of the body, first thing we can do is start to massage ourselves. Just like this, starting at the left lower portion of the abdomen, because again, this is where things end. So we want to stimulate this first, so by the time we get up, and over and around, we're stimulating peristalsis, and now we're pushing into areas that have already begun to get freed up. And so we teach to always use gentle, pulling, circular movements from the sigmoid colon to the cecum and back. And this way can you really start to apply techniques to help to heal thyself. So what's the number one remedy that Cayce gave for constipation? Olive oil. Nice shot. Castor oil taken internally is very harsh cathartic. But yes, castor oil packs across the abdomen do help, but the number one was olive oil. He said to take small doses 4 times a day for 4 days and then leave off. So the number one remedy, olive oil. So about a teaspoon. So you can just put this on top of meals, on a salad. You can just take it raw, but get a good source of olive oil 4 times a day for 4 days. Number one remedy for constipation that he gave. All right, so we mentioned the benefits of colonics and colon hydrotherapy. Now in the Cayce way, this is always done with a few additives. He would recommend to use some salt and baking soda, and it would help to clean the walls of the colon first to remove debris and impaction. And then at the very end, he said, then last waters use glycothymoline, which of course we have back here on the table. Now glycothymoline's got a lot of different uses in the Cayce readings. You can certainly use it in colonics or enemas. Its original inception was a mouthwash and a gargle, but it's excellent for a pack across the sinuses. If you ever have sinusitis or sinus congestion, you just simply take a hand cloth, soak it with the glycothylamine, place it right over the face, layer of plastic so you can put a heating pad, get it nice and warm, and literally within about 20-30 minutes you feel that relief. Also, he recommended the glycothylamine pack over the spine right before adjustments or manipulations. Most beneficial. Now, inside the colon, the glycothylamine is an alkalinizing agent and actually will help to tone the smooth muscular wall of the colon. Pause. Any questions so far?
When you talk about flaxseed oil.
Flaxseed oil?
Ground flaxseed.
It's wonderful. So the ground flaxseed is still going to have the hull and the husk within it, which is very good bulk fiber for the body. Absolutely. And the nice thing about flaxseed oil is it's 50-50 omega-3 to omega-6. So it's a great source of omega-3 fats too. Good. Any others? Yes?
You were saying the brown beans, rice, and what?
Oh, like old school Indian succotash. Rice, beans, and corn form a complete amino acid sequence.
And then you named another set of fruits.
Milk, soy milk, rice milk, almond milk, which now there's this debate of whether they should call it milk, whatever. Soy, rice, almond beverage. Soy, rice, and almond. So you're like, what about coconut milk or hemp milk? Yeah, they're all good. Try them out. But I definitely know that those three in combination form a complete amino acid sequence. Great.
How about black seed oil?
Black seed? You mean like black cumin seed?
Is that what yeah.
Yeah. So cumin seed, yes, has some good health benefits, very much to it, absolutely. It doesn't have a whole lot of mention. I actually don't think it has any mention in the readings. I don't think I've seen that one, but sure, absolutely.
Another thing for the glycosine is to put a few drops in water in the morning when you first wake up because it's some alkaline.
Yes, a few drops for the internal and great for the babies. So he said for colicky babies, thank you for reminding me, Rose. For colicky babies, he said put about 4 to 5 drops in their formula, and you give it to them until you can smell it in their stool. And as you know, the first thing you do when you change a diaper is, yeah, give a good. So when you smell the glyco in the baby, yeah, I prefer the wine myself. But yeah, we can smell it. He says that's gone through their system and great for colicky babies too. Thank you. All right. So, moving right along. He said digestive system, or rather that may be called nervous indigestion, occurs at times. Remember, the body should never eat when it's overexcited, and especially never when mad. For these produce that sympathetic nervous system. Remember, that fight or flight nervous system will produce disorders that make for very bad reactions within the system. So always make sure you're calm, at peace, and thankful every time you take a meal. Do not become over-anxious, for to be sure, the mental is the builder, and the over-anxiousness may bring about barriers to proper reactions through the system, whether as related to the circulatory forces or the assimilations or the eliminations of the body. So always be mindful of the thoughts and certainly the emotional state when you eat your foods, my friends. So in the nervous system or systems, we find what must have been the primary causes of this person's disorder and disease. He says in the lower dorsal area, now we call it the thoracic spine, these lesions directly influence the digestion or the digestive organism. For each and everybody, there should be thorough mastication to chew the food. For if this is done, the activity of the glands in the mouth and the salivary glands is such as to keep the throat and the bronchi, so think about lung and bronchial conditions, and much healthier. So bolting food or swallowing it by the use of liquids produces more colds than any one activity of the diet. So in Cayce's mind, we would just take liquids just to help lubricate, just sipping at a time. So this thing of munch, 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 gurgle, 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 not very good for the body. Okay? Now, when we take a look at the spine, from our diagram from yesterday, now we get to a little bit more detail with regards to the nervous system. So we term this cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. And in Cayce's day, remember the thoracic was called the dorsal spine. And so remember that the nerves predominantly coming into here affect the digestive organs. So for those with diabetic conditions, he said T6 was the common area to be adjusted or use manipulation. Now, if you can't get adjustments, you can certainly do basic massage strokes and techniques, which would simply be right next to the spine. So, in fact, all of you right now, if you can feel on your back and your spine, feel the bumps, these little bumps right here in the midline. And so doing stretches, for example, basic like a cat and cow in yoga will help to loosen this area up. And then right next to those bumps, so don't press on them, it's kind of tender, but right next to the bumps, doing heart-shaped circles, up, out, pressure and relax. Pressure and relax. You see the heart-shaped circles right down the spine. Working from the base of the skull all the way down to the tailbone, it's one of the most simplest things you can do to keep the nervous system coordinated, relaxed, and balanced. In fact, that's the Next Venture Inward article that I wrote, was how to use this massage to give a spiritual massage. So as we see, these areas certainly go to digestion. So any problems with digestive activity, check the spine, especially through the mid-back region. Okay, so can't have a topic of nutrition diet without talking about fasting for a little bit, because often this question would come up in conferences and seminars, so we'll go ahead and address a little bit of it now. So is there benefits to periodic fasting? Yes, there are, but if done properly. One of the worst things you can do is to do a big 180 degree on your diet. So if you ever watch how nature grows, if you try to take a plant and quickly bend it another way, oftentimes it's going to injure or cause some problems. And the same thing with your body. And so I would reference, for example, the Braggs, who makes the apple cider vinegar, did write a bit about fasting. And periodic fasting is often used in many different cultures and traditions, especially in spiritual cleanses. So here's what Cayce had to say about it. He said, to fast or purify the body, he said, but it's not just the body, but it's also the mind. Purifying of mind is of the mind, not of the body. For as the Master gave, it's not that which enters the body, but that which comes out that causes sin. It is one does with purpose. For all things are pure and of themselves, and for the sustenance of man, body, mind, and soul. And remember, they must work together. And so if you choose to do periodic fasting, start off with maybe just one meal and switching more to raw or simple juices. And now there's groups that are looking at what's called 1 meal a day physiology. In fact, Wim Hof does this. He eats one large meal a day, but it takes time for you to naturally develop that into your system. So we'll talk about some of Cayce's fasting and diets, including the apple diet. He also gave one which was just oranges, and also one which was just grapes, and Concord grapes to be specific. And so how many of you have seen things like the Master Cleanser, where people are sustaining nothing but fresh squeezed lemon and purified water with a little bit of capsicum, aka cayenne, and a certain type of maple syrup, was it grade B? Yeah, so the combination of these things for like 21 some odd days. There's a cute documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, where people are doing 30 to 60 day juice fasts. And you can see for yourself some of the health benefits. So if you choose to do this, go slowly, gently, and a little bit at a time. Don't try to do a complete 180 of your diet. As Peter Schoeb often would say, it can really cause a lot of problems, especially for people that try to go completely raw in their diet. So yes, there are completely raw individuals, and this certainly has some health benefits to it. But again, what did Cayce say? He said that if you fast in the body, you also must fast where? In the mind. Okay? And so always addressing body and mind together. And according to the readings, he said 1 meal a day should be predominantly raw, because when you eat mostly raw fruits and veggies, you're going to get more of the vitamin component of that food. But he also said 1 meal should also be composed of cooked vegetables and fruits, because when you cook it, you literally unwind the proteins inside of the vegetables, and now you extract more of the mineral components. You see? So mostly raw to get more of the vitamins, cooked to get more of the minerals. And when you cook your vegetables, he said try to keep it contained so that it cooks in its juices and you can assimilate more of it. This is why he loved the Patapar paper, just taking basic wax paper. And when you cook your vegetables, cook them in that paper so it contains all the juices and therefore minerals within them. So Someone asked, please give some general rules that will help this body keep in a healthier condition. And he says, a general activity for the body in much of a normal condition is to keep the acidity and the alkalinity in proper balance. The best manner to indicate this is to test the alkalinity or acidity of the body through the salivary glands or through the salivary gland membranes by using litmus paper. It could also be done through the urine. The urine's going to be slightly more acidic. So how many of you have ever done this? Taken just litmus paper to test your alkalinity? Most simplest way to do it. It's fairly inexpensive, but when you use litmus paper, make sure that's first thing in the morning or before you eat or drink anything, because otherwise you're going to test the pH of what you just ate or drank. So test it, and then it has a little color code comparison to see literally where you are. Probably if you want to really test your blood pH, the most accurate way is to do a blood draw, but keep this in mind, that your body is designed to keep that pH a very, very specific tight range between 7.2 to about 7.4. And your body, come heck or high water, will do anything it has to keep that pH in that range. If it goes out, everything starts shutting down and going to heck. And so what happens is when we eat a predominantly acidic diet, according to the readings, it robs from other portions of the body to maintain that proper alkalinity. And this can definitely be seen in the urine and things that we have to excrete to maintain that proper pH. So here we go. I want you to have this list memorized by this afternoon and for those playing. So then we'll take a short break right after we cover this topic and then come back and continue. So in the Cayce view, it's all about biochemically pH balanced diet. That 80% of the food should be alkaline and 20% should be acidic. Now, this isn't the food itself, because you see, one of the most alkaline things you can do is take lemons. Lemon water is one of the most common recommendations throughout Cayce readings. He said one of the healthiest things first thing in the morning is when you get up, room temperature, or even warm water, if you want to help stimulate eliminations, take fresh squeezed lemon, put in that water, take it first thing in the morning. And especially before and after exercise. There are certain ones where he says cut a lemon in half, squeeze the lemon juice, take that, go for a good solid exercise, come back, take the other half of the lemon and bite it. So he says get the rind and all that stuff in there, a little pinch of salt, then drink copious amounts of water, and then relax a little bit before you take your first meal. He said this will alkalinize the system extremely quickly. I see your hand. I'll come right back to you, my friend. So remember that it's not just one or the other, but there's a range. So there's extremely alkaline, which are lemons and watermelon. And then moderately alkaline, or alkaline and moderately alkaline. So alkaline things, so we're talking about cantaloupe, cayenne, celery, dates, and figs. So for those of you that love to make your mummy food, right? So take those medjool dates and the black mission figs, chop them up nice and fine, cook them with a little distilled water and just a pinch of organic yellow cornmeal. He said that mummy food would be a good spiritual food for a spiritual body. And as you can see, they're packed with fiber, packed with nutrients, and very alkaline. But you'll notice that things like limes, kelp, mango, melons, papaya, parsley, seaweeds, grapes, watercress, asparagus, fruit juices, kiwis, passion, pears, pineapple, raisins, plums, vegetable juices, these are all fruits and veggies. Some of you may be like, wait a minute, Dr. Amonte, lemons and citrus, that's very acidic. And you're right, absolutely. So it's not the food itself that he's describing as alkaline or acid. Notice it's the reaction. So one of the most alkaline breakfasts you can have is taking grapefruits and oranges and combining them with a little bit of fresh lime and fresh lemon. So the cold remedy. If you feel yourself getting that scratchy throat and that drippy nose, he said take about 40 to 48 ounces, preferably fresh squeezed orange juice, and squeeze 2 whole lemons into it. Drink in about 30 minutes. So you're not chugging like back in college days, but you're drinking it at a fairly brisk pace. You can divide it into 4 12-ounce glasses and do half a lemon in each. Consume that in 30 minutes and with no other meals around it. And it's like shocking your pool in the pH. It will literally help to shock the body into an alkaline state. If you do this, though, be forewarned, it's packed full of vitamin C. And what is vitamin C? A natural laxative. Think about it. And you will have eliminations going down. So moderately alkaline, you can see the rest of the fruits and the veggies, and that's where we start to get to some of the fresh beans, beets, love those, and they're all alphabetized. And yes, I will give these slides over to you, John, so when you put it out there, you'll have this list for you. But certainly you can look up list of acidic versus alkaline foods. So we see almonds, we see raw honey, leeks, mushrooms, all those wonderful fruits and veggies that should be in our daily diet. Now, let's take a look at the other side. So neutral. So things like fresh butter, creams, fresh cow's milk, there's our whey, margarine, oils, so olive oil is a little exception, and yogurt. These are all neutral things. So once we get to moderately acidic, this is your green unripened bananas, so make sure your bananas are ripened. Things like blueberries, bran, butter, cereals, cheeses, crackers, cranberries and dried beans, coconut egg whites, whole eggs, goat's milk, honey. And so mostly of these things is going to be slightly acidic, but I want to focus here before we take our break on the extremely acidic items. So if you get sprouted breads, those are slightly acidic, but again, this is okay. You want just to be 20% of your diet. Extremely acidic things, though, so these are things we really want to make sure we avoid. Number one is artificial sweeteners. Did Cayce recommend sugar? Yeah, absolutely, all the time. He said things like beet syrup, or fig syrup, or syrup of figs is very good for eliminations too. He loved raw sugars, raw honeys, and those types of things. But any artificial sweeteners, this is the sucralose, the aspartames, these must be eliminated from the human diet, in my professional opinion. Things like beef, beer, most of your breads. If it's not sprouted, it's very acidic. Caramelized brown sugar, carbonated soft drinks. So according to Edgar Cayce, he says the best use of carbonated beverages is what? He might have said that. I didn't see that, but he said slop for hogs. So if you're raising hogs, he said, yeah, give them all your carbonated beverages. They love it. The best use of, I don't know if he was joking or not. Yeah, back in the day, they had hog farms. Who knows? So avoid those. Any refined cereals. Yes, chocolate is on this list too. Doesn't mean it should be avoided. It means to get organic dark chocolate. In fact, dark chocolate is packed full of magnesium, which is a natural muscle relaxer. So the best sources of magnesium are dark chocolate and pumpkin seeds. So in the fall time, roast your pumpkin seeds, sprinkle some good dark chocolate over them. It's a great source of magnesium. You heard it here first. But also things like cigarettes and tobacco. Now, he said this, organic coffee can be alkaline, but most processed coffees are very acidic. And yes, to add any cream or any milk to coffee, he said it's no longer a food. Coffee in of itself, he actually describes as a food. Just like red wine, if you take it with breads, dark breads, like your rye and so forth, or the pumpernickel breads. However, processed coffees or coffee with cream, he says, can form a curd in the system. So, unrefined cream of wheat, certainly any white sugar custard, deer. Drugs are actually very acidic to the body in their reaction. Fish, the white and wheat flours, any fruit juices that add sugar, or one of my least favorite items of the human population, the high fructose corn syrup. So again, fruit juice is very, very good for the body, but if you're buying it in the bottle, please make sure you're getting organic with not the other sugars and fructose corn syrup added to it. Now, as you can read the rest of it, probably one of the main things that stands out are any of the sweeteners, your meats, and things like liquor and so forth. The white pastas, white refined sugars, he said, please to avoid these along with white breads. Okay? All right, saw a couple of hands peeking up over here. We're going to start with this lovely gentleman.
I just heard that with all this lemon juice that you were talking about, doesn't tequila go with that?
Does what?
Tequila.
Tequila. I suppose so, right? Yeah, but that's limes, so yeah. Okay, up here, then we'll come over here. Go ahead.
What about stevia?
So stevia is a great one. So that's a natural form. In fact, you can grow it. I used to have it in my garden, and one of my favorite things to do. So stevia is a great sugar, great sweetener, I should say. It's not technically a sugar, but it is a type of simple carbohydrate, which certainly mimics it. But yeah, if you grow it naturally in your garden, just take a few of the leaves and put it in your salads, and oh my goodness, it adds such a nice little sweetener to it. The packets are fine. Yeah, just make sure it's made in good manufacturing principles. Stevia is a great one to add, just a very little bit because it's very strong.
I have some confusion about vinegars.
Yes.
Because there's, in the readings, stay away from vinegars and all of that. But then there's other times, like, I don't know how to tell. Is the difference the white vinegar versus the apple cider vinegar?
Yes.
Is that the only?
Well, so the question is about vinegar. So it's acetic acid is vinegar in of itself. So so things that are pickled, he said to avoid. But apple cider vinegar is a totally different animal. So the apple cider vinegar, especially the organic kind with the mother, called the pulp at the bottom, has all those natural raw enzymes. So with the enzymes, if you take a small dose of it before or during or after a meal, it actually helps the digestion absorption process take place. And because it's acetic acid, if you place it on the skin like over injuries, he said if you combine raw apple cider vinegar with salt and massage in the body, it's a wonderful remedy for sprains, strains, aches, and bruises. In fact, that's one of the things he recommended to Dr. Riley in his car accident, was using the apple cider vinegar and salt, massaging over his knee injury, and the other day to use the olive oil with a tincture of myrrh, and to alternate those two. So yes, there is a definite difference between apple cider vinegar with the pulp and the core. So there's a few good brands. Bragg's, of course, as we mentioned, is one of the best. I also like Spectrum. They make some great products. And actually, do you guys have Trader Joe's here in Arizona? Trader Joe's actually does a really good apple cider vinegar too. And you look at the bottom and you see that pulp. So when you're looking at your apple cider or any vinegars, look at the bottom. And if it's clear and you don't see anything, bless it, put it back. Yeah, good.
What do you know about xylitol?
Xylitol is a fascinating thing where it's an additive as a sweetener to it. There's not a whole lot of research on it yet. But again, it is kind of manufactured and extracted from Mother Nature, so I'm honestly not sure. My opinion is stay as close to Mother Nature as possible, and she will treat you well. But yeah, I'm not aware of any research on the pros and cons of xylitol, but definitely manufactured sugars certainly can be very harmful.
As a chew supplement to help gums.
That's right. That's right.
Sparkling water, carbonated?
Well, he did recommend to use some sparkling water with a little bit of sodium bicarbonate to be taken with some of the treatments, but that was it. That's the only reference to sparkling waters in the readings that I'm aware of.
And you have the apple cider vinegar for the massage and the salt for the massage. You have the second piece of that thing.
One more time.
Second piece. You have the apple cider vinegar and the salt for the massage for spray.
Oh, and he alternated with olive oil and a tincture of myrrh. So he would heat the olive oil, not to boil it, but almost so, and then add equal parts of the tincture of myrrh. And Barb makes a really good product now called Magi Myrrh, where this is already combined together. But yes, if you have your olive oil at home, just put it in a little glass dish, about a tablespoon of each, he would say. Heat up the olive oil, then add the myrrh, mix them together. Wonderful healing remedy.
If the dark chocolate is good, is it good at night?
Dark chocolate, my dear, is good any time of the day. Yes, absolutely.
It will not interfere with sleep.
No.
With magnesium.
Yes, it will certainly help with that. Yes.
How do you feel about the GMO modified foods?
Yes, the question is about GMO, genetically modified organisms. The research is actually on both sides of the fence. So it's interesting that there's evidence to suggest that it's potentially not harmful, and there's other evidence to suggest that it potentially is. My professional opinion is stay as close as you can to organic, non-GMO related foods if you can. Okay, you're just not going to be able to escape it in this modern day society, and just more and more of things that are cultivated. So the best thing we can honestly do is get as organic, non-GMO as much as you can. Let the rest of it go, bless it, and so forth. But to have your own garden and grow your own at home as much as you possibly can. That's my opinion. A sweetener of swerve? You got me. I haven't heard of that one.
We just ordered some. I think it's from a plant, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, check it out. Let me know how it works. And one more.
I'm just wondering about the yogurt and the custard that you're talking about there. If you sweeten them with some honey, is that a problem?
No, not at all.
I mean, I thought it was more of an alkaline.
Yeah, well, raw honey is slightly alkaline. That's exactly right. And remember that these things aren't bad. The acidic things, I mean, some of them I would absolutely leave out, never put in my body. But here's the thing is you want 20% of it to be acidic. And so oftentimes we get caught up in thinking, oh my goodness, we have to eat all this alkaline food. But the truth is, if you go too alkaline, it can cause just as much problems as being too acidic. But most of the modern American diet, which is now called standard American diet or the SAD diet, standard American diet, right, is way on the acidic side of things. And so right, if you're doing fresh fruits with a little bit of yogurt, that's a beautiful balance. So you have to make sure, though, that you are eating acid-forming foods. And so the medical director really uses the statement to say 80% of the time, eat what you know you're supposed to. 20% of the time, eat the rest of the stuff. So, all right, one more, then we'll take a break.
Agave syrup?
Agave syrup is wonderful. Yes, definitely a nice sweetener. Again, we're staying close to nature, just one step from its extraction. And so I'll finish with this one, that when I was doing my Doctors Without Borders trip down to the Fijian Islands, so in Fiji is predominantly sugarcane plantations. And so if you've ever seen raw sugar, I mean, it's pulpy, it's fibrous, but man, the kids would just chew this stuff up. It destroys their teeth. But when you look at raw sugar, it's extremely healthy. Packed full of B vitamins. It's got all the chromium minerals, which chromium is necessary to move the sugar into the cell. So the number one mineral to give to diabetics, we have a whole slide coming up after the break, is chromium. And so natural raw sugar, Mother Nature, she has the answers. But when you extract it and you process it and refine it and turns that white powder, you lose all that stuff, all the minerals, all the B vitamins, etc. So yeah, let's stay close to Mother Nature, keep that balance. Certainly we'll see the results. Thank you very much.